Welcome to our first ever Skill Futures for Women panel discussion. My name is Laura King, and I'm the program manager at Skills Canada Nova Scotia. And over the next school year, we will be introducing you to some amazing tradeswomen, apprentices, and journey persons working in skilled trade sectors across Nova Scotia. At this time, I'd like to take the moment to thank the Apprenticeship Agency of Nova Scotia for making it possible for us financially to have these discussions, as well as work with young girls across the province, and the many organizations and industry partners who are also supporting the project by introducing us to some amazing tradeswomen in our province. Today, we are showcasing the experiences of female tradespersons, journey persons, and apprentices in construction trades. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our panel. We have Eve McDonald, journey person electrician, Barb McPherson, carpenter and foreman, Rhonda Frigo, plumber and NSCC faculty, and Kate Surrett, welder and the former apprentice of the year. So thank you for being with us and for sharing your journeys. And Rhonda, I'm going to pick on you and have you kick us off and tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Rhonda Frigo, and I am a plumbing instructor at the Nova Scotia Community College. My journey started in almost 22 years ago now. I always thought growing up that I wanted to be a nurse. And that's what I thought I was going to do because, back then when I went to school, women became nurses or teachers. That was really the only two careers that you were really pushed towards. And in the spring of grade 12, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go to university. I didn't know if I wanted to become a nurse. I knew that I didn't want to go to university and spend $1 million trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. I knew if I took a year off school, I probably wouldn't go back. I'd find some job and be like, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I decided to go to community college for a year. Well, the only thing left in community college was plumbing. All right. I'm a girl. Okay. I love makeup. I own 124 pairs of shoes. Right. I was thinking there's no way I could possibly be a plumber. But I thought to myself, you know what? Someday I want to own a house. So maybe by taking a trade, it might be helpful for when I do decide to purchase a house in the future. So I signed up and I went to community college. And I went to the one on Lead Street. Actually, that's where I teach now, but that's where I went. And in order to graduate, you had to do a 5-week work term. And I just happened to be working at Tim Hortons on Coombe Road at the time. And there was a plumbing company that had their shop in the basement. So the guys were always coming up for coffee and that kind of stuff. So when it came time for me to do my 5-week work term, I naturally asked them if I could go with them. And I remember their boss saying, well, you can sure come work with us, but I've never heard of this before. So I went to work with him and I ended up staying with that company for 13 years. So it worked out really well. So once I got hired on with that company, of course, I became an apprentice. And I worked with them for a year, and then I went back to school for 5 or 6 weeks and got a raise, because that's what happens when you become an apprentice. And I went back to school 3 times. And when I finally became a journey person, I was the second female to do so in the province of Nova Scotia in the plumbing trade. So that was pretty exciting for me. So pretty big accomplishment, I think. And so I worked with that company for 13 years. We did a lot of construction. It was a commercial company, so we did a lot of construction work. We did a lot of service work, all that kind of stuff, all around Nova Scotia, mostly HRM, but we traveled across the province. Then my boss had bought a sailboat and moved to Belize, where then I started working for another company. And then I had a baby. And when I was nine months pregnant, I was just going stir crazy at the time. So I stopped off at NSCC to talk to a few guys that I used to work with. And there was this woman there that said, hey, how do you know these guys? And I said, well, I used to work with them. And she said, have you ever thought about teaching? I said, no, I can't teach. I'm not a teacher, I'm a plumber. And she said, well, just think about it for a few minutes. She said, think about, you know, summer's off, March break, all that kind of stuff. She said, send me your resume. So I did. And then 9 months later, I started working at the college. So I must say it'll be 8 years next week that I started working at the college. And I absolutely love it. You know, I get to volunteer with programs like Techsploration and Skills and Women Unlimited. I've always worked with really amazing tradesmen, ones that have been super supportive, that were almost like my big brothers. Were always there to encourage me, to help me along the way, to answer any questions that I had. So I've always been, you know, I've always really lucked out, which is really good. One piece of advice I often give any female thinking about getting into a trade is never let anybody tell you that you can't do that, because you absolutely can. You know, it drives me bananas when people say, oh, you can't do that, or you know, you can't become that, because you absolutely can, right? You can literally do anything and be anything that you want to be. You just have to believe in yourself. It's kind of a theme that's going on right now with this conversation, but it's 100% true, right? You have to, you can't go into the job thinking that you are there to prove something to the world, right? You are there to do your job and do it well, and that's all anybody ever expects. I think one of the biggest challenges is, I know for myself, is thinking that I always had to work harder than everybody else. When in fact, you know, that's not the truth. The truth is I just had to go in and do the best that I could possibly do, you know, and, you know, not be so hard on myself. I think as women, we tend to be a little bit harder on ourselves, when in fact, there's no need to be. So.
Thank you.
what you
Kate,
wanted?
how about you go next?
Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Kate Surratt. I'm a Red Seal welder at the Halifax Shipyard. I've been welding for about 6 years now, but I did not always know that that's what I wanted to do. I worked in many different industries trying to find the right path, but I was never satisfied. So my hands-on personality is what ultimately led me to the trades. When I was 26, I heard about the signing of the shipbuilding contract at Irving, and that's why I decided to apply for welding. So I had never done anything like that before, and I was intimidated to try something new, but I took a leap of faith and applied for welding. So I got accepted to the 2-year diploma program at NSCC, and I graduated in 2014 and began my apprenticeship. So I worked at a few different shops around Halifax until I found my way to the shipyard. And they guided me through my apprenticeship, and I actually got an award through Irving for Apprentice of the Year. So it was intimidating at first going into a male-dominated trade, but I quickly realized that gender does not define what you can do. Every person has their own skill set that will separate you from your peers. So when I started working in the shipyard, I realized that everyone was very welcoming and the guys never judged me on my gender. They were actually really happy to have a small person to fit into the tiny confined spaces. My advice to women coming into the trades would be to not have preconceived fears. It's going to be scary, and you might not know what to expect, but you have to put your fears behind you and focus on being the best tradesperson that you can be. It's very hard work, and you have to be willing to dedicate yourself to it. You're not always going to be great at everything right away, and that's why you have to learn and practice. Learn what your skills are and master them. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid of failure. You can do anything you put your mind to. You just have to focus on your career and, most importantly, your work ethic.
Thank you. How about you, Barb? Would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Barbara McPherson. I am a journey person, carpenter, and foreman with Celtic Construction. I am actually currently working at the NSCC IT building doing the D-wing renovation. I've been with Celtic for almost 3 years. This is actually my third career. I started out by going to university. I studied music, thinking I was going to become a great piano performer. Not so much. Yeah, so instead I changed my career path and went to cooking school and became a chef. I worked as a chef in Halifax for a couple of years, and then I opened my own catering company. And I ran it for 13 years, which was fantastic, but I needed more. I've always had an interest in carpentry. I too am very hands-on. I used to build decks with my grandfather. I worked on my parents' house doing renovations, building a garage. And I worked with my brother, who's also a carpenter, doing various jobs all over the city. So finally, about 5 years ago, I decided, why not go back to school? I needed to work while I was going to school because obviously things are very expensive. So I applied for the part-time blended program at the Ivany campus. And I got a job with my brother, who was working for a company. And during the day, I worked as a carpenter, and 2 nights a week, I went and studied carpentry. My experience as a female has been very favorable. I have worked for many good companies. I have found that many of the sites are very accepting environments. I don't like to use the word accepting, but it's realistic to say that when you walk onto a job site, you are definitely someone who stands out. It's not the norm for most guys to work with females, and there's always a few that have a few snide remarks, but I'm of the age where that doesn't bother me. I'm not, I don't know what to say. That doesn't bother me. If you let it bother you, then you're not going to survive. You need to be confident in who you are, and you need to show that you know what you're doing and that you belong. The most important thing that I can say is that you need to believe in yourself and be strong and confident and never be afraid to ask questions. You shouldn't be doing anything that you don't feel comfortable with. And just because you think it might forward your career, you really should just stick to your values and believe in yourself, and you'll be great, because that's what we're here to do. And that's all I have to say.
That was fantastic. I love the encouragement. And last but not least, Eve, if you could give us a little introduction about you as well, that would be fantastic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eve McDonald. I am a journey person electrician. I have been working with Black McDonald for the last 10 years. When I was in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I guess I was kind of in the same boat as a few of you other women with you didn't really know what you wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something hands-on. My father was a lineman, and I knew that I didn't want to do that. So I was having a hard time pinpointing what trade I wanted to get into. So just doing a little bit of research, I thought that my interests lean more towards electrical. So that's what I applied for originally. And of course, everybody that year wanted to be an electrician. So it was full. And my second choice was electronic engineering technician. So I thought I should probably go to school because I really don't want to take any more time off. I took 1 year off, and I went in and I did that, and I realized I did not like it. I finished the year out just to kind of have it under my belt. But I went back to school the following year and took electrical. So I did my core program with NSCC, and I sent my resumes out everywhere. Nobody called me back, but it was only within a month that I ended up getting a job. My hairdresser, her husband was a manager at an electrical company. So she said, "Oh, you should reach out to my husband." And I asked if they were hiring, and she said she wasn't really sure. Um, so he ended up calling me the very next day and asked me if I was afraid of heights. And I said, "Well, I don't think I'm afraid of heights, but I mean, the most I've ever climbed was a 6 foot ladder, really." So I ended up starting my first job on the McKay Bridge. So we ended up working right underneath the bridge deck on a catwalk. And we also climbed right to the top of the towers, which is about 360 feet. So I definitely got over my fears very quick. And it was actually to my advantage that I didn't have a lot of the fears that a lot of the men did. Um, I was pretty much doing somersaults out there and doing a lot more than they ever could because they were white knuckled the whole time. So, anyways, when I first started out, um, I was I was nervous right down to what I was going to wear. It was hard for me to find clothing to fit me because I'm 5'1". So, woman 5'1", it just it was difficult. um, so I, came onto the job site. I was nervous as could be. I met my foreman on site, and he welcomed me and couldn't have been nicer. Took me up to the job trailer, and all the guys were so nice. It was like they were family immediately. So I worked there for about 7 months, and I actually, I did. I tried too hard at the beginning, where I was putting in way more effort than I should have been. I was lifting things like heavier than what I should have been lifting just to prove myself to everybody else. But at the end of the day, I really didn't need to do that. But I also was talked highly about, and where I could have been laid off after that job, I actually got hired onto another job within the company and did my whole apprenticeship there. Um, and then within about 5 years, they gave me a work van that I was able to take home each day and a work phone. I had my own email. I got into a foreman position. Um, and I was very secure with the company, and I was thought of as an asset. So I fit in very well. Everybody I worked with was amazing. I never had a bad experience with anybody who treated me awful because I was a female. Um, I feel like there's probably more of a fear about how things maybe used to be back in the day than what is true in today's world. Um, I think that to be honest, I think guys actually enjoy working with a female, and it just makes for a fun environment. As long as you get along with the people that you're working with, then the days go by really well, and you can really have a lot of fun with the people that you're working with and the job sites that you get on. So I I think that it is a great thing for women to get into trades, and I highly recommend doing a trade if you are a hands-on individual. I think that's all for that section.
Yeah. Wow, what an amazing group of experiences and journeys. And I love, I love hearing all of the positive experiences in the workforce, because it does show that we have come a long ways from maybe what was even perceived or believed to be happening even well, I've been with Skills for 9 years. When I came in 9 years ago, it was very much a different feel and a different vibe 9 years ago on a work site. and in the classroom as well, with females entering different trades programs. So it's great to hear that we've made progress. And in that same kind of stream, I'm now hoping to open up the conversation just around certain themes of female tradespersons working in construction trades, and kind of ask you each to kind of give one of the most rewarding aspects of being a tradesperson in your specific construction trade, and if that is unique to you being a woman in that role or a tradesperson in that role.
I think one of the most rewarding parts about being a tradesperson is being an expert in your field. Especially doing service work, for example. You know, you get a phone call and someone is just distraught, completely distraught, that they think that their world has just come to an end because, you know, their water tank just leaked all over their basement and there's no possible way anything could get better that day. And you show up and almost like a superhero, you come swooping in, and you take the old one out and you put the new one in and give them hot water again, and they're just like, wow, like, thank you so much. They just can't, you know, it just makes them so much happier. I think another part of a rewarding part of being a tradesperson is that sense of pride that you get when you work on a job site, and at the end of the job you can look at it and say, hey, I was part of that. You know, I helped build that building, right? I think as tradespeople, we all tend to drive down the road, and every time you pass a job site that you worked on, you say, hey, I did that, or I did the plumbing there, or I worked in that building. And it doesn't even matter if there's anybody in the car, you still kind of just say it because you still have that sense of pride that you had something to do with building that building. So, yeah.
I think the most rewarding part for me was proving to myself that I could do it. Like when I think back to when I first started school, I was so scared to go in there. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I was just very intimidated and like kind of shy almost. I didn't know where my place was. And then once I started school, I started seeing that I was actually good at it. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is actually something I'm good at. And especially when I got into the shipyard, learning new skills, like learning what you're good at. I got all my pipe tickets, and just like seeing that growth within yourself. And I think in the trade specifically, there's always something to learn and something to master. Like you can start from knowing nothing about that trade to learning more and more every day. And that's just something that I like. I can always push myself to learn more. And yeah, that's what I find the most rewarding part is. And also, as previously mentioned, building a ship from this, and then you look back and you're like, wow, that's a whole ship and I helped build it. So that's my favorite part.
That's fantastic. It's like, I built that ship.
Yeah.
Laura, can I mention one more thing just really quickly about rewarding? I think we're kind of where I'm at now in my career, as a plumbing instructor. I think the most rewarding part now is seeing the number of women who are entering the trades now. And honestly, I feel like part of it is because I am teaching at NSCC and because I am volunteering with organizations such as Techploration and Skills. Because I strongly believe that if women see other women doing these jobs and these careers, then all of a sudden they get it in their head, hey, I could do that too, you know, hey, I can do that, I can be that, right? So I really believe that now one of the most rewarding parts is just knowing that I'm part of all this, you know, and trying to really reach out to women and and let them know that they can certainly do this. So.
I guess for me, the most rewarding thing is probably the problem solving that we get to do. Because even though a lot of our work is new construction, we do an awful lot of existing, so renovation type things. And I like the collaboration with everybody on our team. We all come from different backgrounds, we all have different ideas, but I'm really lucky because we're willing to share ideas and nobody is sort of looked upon as having maybe an out there idea, because sometimes the out there ideas are the ones that actually work. And while I may not have as much experience as my coworkers, I've done a few different things that they haven't. So I like being that participating member of a team and being accepted for your ideas. It's fantastic.
For me, one of the most rewarding aspects of my job would be when we successfully repair any sort of like catastrophic failure. So we will get service calls, we have contract jobs, we do big projects, we do commercial work. But it's really neat when a storm's hitting and all of a sudden you get a call that a school just lost power. So you have to get a crew of people together. You have to go, you have to troubleshoot the job and determine how long they're going to be without power. If it's going to be a while, then you have to go to plan B. You have to think about, getting temporary power hooked up and then finding out the initial cause as to what happened. Did the wires burn up? Did it blow something up? Just there's so many different reasons as to why something like that could happen, but it's finding it out and most importantly, finding it out safely. Electricity is very dangerous. When I first started, even when I first got my ticket, I was terrified to work on anything live, any testing that I had to do. And I think that you always need to have that bit of fear to it because you can't get complacent with power. So you have to do the proper you have to do the proper safety precautions as you're doing something. And once you do something like a shutdown or high voltage testing for the first time, it's extremely scary, but it's also extremely rewarding because you just accomplished something that not too many people out there will do. And it does take a lot of training and a lot of knowledge behind what you're doing to realize what sort of PPE, personal protective equipment, that you're going to need. And, analyzing the environment that you're in and the risks involved. So once you complete a task like that, it's, after you take a deep breath, then it's a good pat on the back for a job well done. So that's one of the kind of cool things in our career that we get to do. And there's many more. I know that the same as a couple other, as I already said, but you drive by something and you're like, oh, I repaired that. And I think people are starting to get a little annoyed with me because they'll call it out and tell me to stop before I even say it out. The few select ones that I pick out every time I drive by.
There's no
But
problem with tooting your own horn.
yeah,
Sometimes I don't think we do that enough in Nova Scotia, to be quite
that is
honest.
true. That is
We're
true.
a bit too humble.
No, absolutely. But well, for instance, the one thing that I find really neat is if you pass a ball field, there's a bunch of light standards that have the lights for the ball field. So they're about between 60 and 80 feet high. Skinny pole with a bunch of big spotlights on the top. So you have to climb those with a wire grab on your harness. And once you're up there, the pole is about the size of your arm, and you're looking down 80 feet in the air. And, it's kind of cool to point out things like that. Like, I climb those, I repair those. And, looking at it is one thing, but when you're actually doing it, it's quite another. So we get to experience a lot of neat things.
Bless you, because I fully honest that I have a fear of heights, even being 4 feet off the ground. I'm no good to anyone. So I tip my hat to you for sure. So in that same stream of things, what's probably something that you would find the most challenging about being a tradesperson right now, in the environment that we're in, and also, being a female, might be the only female on the floor or in the yard. What's something that you found the most challenging about about being a female tradesperson?
Well, I guess challenging is it can work in my favor, but it's also challenging is my size. You know, I can get a lot of things done that others can't, but then there's a lot of things that I can't do. Usually we have proper protocols for how we do certain things, lifting techniques and what have you. But geez, I actually now now that I'm starting, I can't really think of a whole lot off the spot on the spot. Um, size and strength is definitely one of the big ones, but I might actually have to think about this a little longer if somebody else wants to chime in.
Definitely.
I'd like to actually make a point on that as well. That's one of the things that I was actually like worried about getting into the trades, that I'm small and that I wouldn't be able to maybe lift as much as a man could or something like that. But that, like I mentioned earlier, is also one of my advantages because I can get into a lot of spots that certain people may not be able to. So I'm like kind of the go-to person when there's a tiny area with something that needs to be welded. So it is challenging in a way, but you can, in a positive note, you can work it that in that direction. But I find probably the biggest challenge for me is I feel like when, say, I get on a new crew with um, 15 guys that I don't know, I almost feel like I need to prove myself in order for them to take me seriously. Like when I first get on the crew, they might have the mindset like, oh, great, like she's not going to be able to, do everything kind of thing. But yeah, at the same time, it's nice being able to prove them wrong and taking that on as a challenge and being like, well, actually I can, and I'm pretty great at what I do. So that's what the most challenging thing for me is.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I remember when I first started working in the trade, I was literally the only female on any job site. Like because we're talking, over 20 years ago, right? So, especially in the city of Halifax, there wasn't a whole lot. I never saw any other female tradespeople. I never saw, or tradeswomen. I never saw any electricians. I never saw any other plumbers. I never saw anybody until probably 10 years into my career. And then I started seeing a few more here or there. And I remember working for this one job site at one time, and to kind of follow your story, Kate, I was on the job site and no one talked to me. And at lunchtime, everybody when they have those little circles, everybody sits on their buckets or whatever, and they have lunch. Well, their circle was so close that there was like no room for me. And I was like, this is awful. Like everybody talks to me. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And so I remember that night, I had run into, I got out for wings with a bunch of the guys from another job site that was wing night or something. So we all went out, and I happened to run into these guys who I'd worked with that morning. And I said to them, I said, why didn't you guys talk to me? I'm like, this was awful. Like, it was an awful day for me today. Like, everybody talks to me. And they said, well, our boss kind of warned us, you know, that we shouldn't really talk to you because we might say something that was wrong. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so, yeah, so I think I broke the ice there. But yeah, it can be it can be a little bit of a challenge to try to fit in a little bit. Also, another little story. I remember when I first started, especially doing service work, I'd go knock on the door, some house and or apartment, and some lady would open the door and she'd be like, I'm like, hi, I'm the plumber. And I'm the same, I'm 5'1", you know, I was 120 pounds, I wasn't very big. And they would say, oh no, I think you have the wrong door. And they would close the door. And I'm like, no, this is the right one. And then I could hear them calling my boss on the phone being like, oh, I think you're gonna have to send somebody else because she looks like she's 12. And I'm really not sure she's capable of doing this job. And my boss was just like, he would just say, I wouldn't have sent her if she wasn't capable of doing the job. And if you want your plumbing done, then you have to let Rhonda in your front door. So then they would come and they'd open up the door and they'd be like, okay. And then I go in and do my job and I let my work speak for itself. And afterwards they were like, wow, that's impressive, right? And then if they ever had another service call, quite often they would call back and say, can I have Rhonda come back? So yeah, it's definitely, it was definitely one of those challenges though, like just trying to fit in and just get, you know, and just get people to realize that, you know, you're just there to do your job and do it well. You know, you just want to get a paycheck like everybody else. So yeah.
So I guess in that same, so kind of, you've spoke to how things have come a ways in a while, you know what I mean? Like you said, Rhonda, starting at 20 years ago, you didn't see any other females really on the work site with you. And today you're seeing more. You're still not necessarily seeing equal amounts. You could still be the same, you'd still be the only female with a team, but you're seeing females in a bunch of other teams kind of thing. So I guess kind of on that same stream of moving forward into the future, if there was one thing that you were hopeful for females in the trades, in skilled trades, in construction trades, moving forward for the future, what's something that you'd really love to see change or happen in the near future or in the far future, to just make it more of an equal environment for women and men in the trades?
Well, I think we would all like to see the numbers increase. And, you know, I would love for example, my boys, you know, I know if you ask my 8-year-old, you know, he goes and tells everybody, my mom's a plumber, right? And that just is normal to him. And so, you know, it would be nice for people to say, oh, well, you know, my cousin's an electrician, or my aunt's a welder, right? So I would just like to see more women enter the trades and it just become normal. You know, it doesn't have to be so that we stick out like a sore, no, I shouldn't say stick out like a sore thumb, but like we stick out, you know, that everybody's like, oh, there's a girl on the job site, right? Like it shouldn't be like that. It should just be, we're all just there working, doing our jobs just like everybody else, right? So I certainly hope for the future that that it just becomes the normal, right? But we all know that without these amazing programs that we have in Nova Scotia and organizations that are definitely reaching out to young women in particular, and letting, you know, and introducing them to role models and mentors like ourselves, and encouraging them and letting them know that, you know, you can have a really successful career as a tradeswoman, right? So yeah.
Anyone else?
Laura, I'd like to maybe talk on what we were speaking about earlier. I'm right now in the middle of going through sort of a struggle. I am 4 months pregnant and found out the hard way that there is nothing implemented for any sort of parental or maternity leave. So, due to the nature of my job, I had to inform my immediate supervisor right away that I was pregnant. I couldn't have him sending me out to do any shutdowns or be lifting anything over the weight that I should be lifting as a pregnant woman. Um, and he was very happy for me. But then we turned around and said, now what? Um, we kept it kind of hush hush for a bit. I was put under his immediate directions, put on light duties. But with COVID, it made it really hard because things are really slow in our industry right now. So we had to go a little further, go to his manager and also our HR department and have a sit down and discuss what I could do. What could I do for the duration of my pregnancy? And I was pretty much told to go out and find out from my union, from my medical, from unemployment, what all my options were. Uh, at 7 weeks pregnant, I got put from 40 hours a week down to anywhere between 12 to 20 hours a week. Not to mention, I'm in the middle of building a house right now, too. So this is an extremely bad time to be having the pay cut. Each day, my employer was having a hard time keeping me going. I called my union and I didn't get any support from them. They told me that I would have to prove that I was falling behind on bills and write a letter, and then they might be able to help me. I really didn't want it to get to that point, and of course, has not yet got to that point. But I have been pretty much, kind of shoved off to the next person, saying it's not my problem, hands in the air, and forced to kind of figure this out on my own. And I'm just hitting closed doors everywhere I go. My employer tried to keep me on until December 1st, but ended up having to let me go at the beginning of November. So I was 3 months and 1 week along, and I was already having to draw sickness. Sickness was the only thing I was eligible for because you can only draw maternity leave 12 weeks prior to delivery. That gives me 3 weeks after I have the baby for maternity. And then it rolls right into parental, which is only 35% of your wage. So it's definitely a huge struggle with, there's no top ups anywhere. There's no additional help. There's no nothing. Since my employer kept me going with partial hours till my 3 month mark, I was able to get my sickness and my maternity to meet. But if I had been laid off any time before that, they wouldn't have met, and I would have had a gap of absolutely no pay. And right now, I'm going to be running out of my parental leave by the time that my baby is 9 months old. So that's going to force me to either A, go back to work at that point, or B, take the remaining 3 months without any pay at all. That's a bridge that I'm going to have to cross when I come to it. But the struggle's real. It's there, and I'm trying to make ends meet right now with my house getting together and everything that comes along with buying things for a house. I'm starting off kind of fresh with no furniture, baby stuff, no appliances. It's a lot at once. And I didn't think about this before I got pregnant. I figured with all of the programs out there that encourage women into trades. I was part of Techspiration for 1 year, and just the year that we're in right now, it's 2020. I figured that there would be something set up, even if it was light duties throughout my pregnancy. But unfortunately, I was looked at as more of a burden right now than anything. And, I can't blame my company or my union, because right now I know that everybody feels for me, but it's just there's been nothing implemented. So everybody is kind of just, like looking and saying, well, you should be able to get this or you should be able to get that. But in reality, I'm getting nothing. And there's nothing out there that I can kind of fall back on. So I'm in the middle of dealing with a group of women who I got introduced to, called Build Together. And we are talking to the right people, get a presentation together, that we can get something implemented in all the unions, so that all the unions have something like this. Because if you're part of the union, technically you are employed by that union. I am borrowed by Black & McDonald. So at the end of the day, they don't have any obligations to keep me going, or to, financially support me through this. But you pay into a union for a reason. And this is the kind of thing that you should be getting help with on the other end, because I'm in a position right now where I don't want to be laid off, but I was forced to be laid off. So that's my struggle. And I am hoping that it ends with me too. My goal is to get something implemented so that the next woman who has to deal with this struggle, who has to deal with the situation, doesn't have to deal with this struggle. And hopefully this goes smoother than it's been for me the last couple months. I'm going to stick with it, and I'm just trying to talk to the right people, and I'm trying to go through the proper channels, and it's kind of a waiting game in between. I'm available to anybody who I'm dealing with to provide any help, or I'm willing to speak on behalf of all women who, may experience this same thing. And hopefully we can, get something implemented and change this for the future. Because if it is 2020 and we want women in the trade, so we have to support women who want to have a family too.
When I was pregnant, I was working for a union company. I was part of a union, and I worked till I was 30 weeks, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And when I went to them, I'd gone to the union, and I just assumed that there was some sort of top up or something. And they said, nope. And they pretty much told me that there will never be enough women in the union to ever really have to worry about that. And I was like, wow, I can't believe you just said that. I'm like, because men can take parental leave, so why isn't there something implemented for that, right? And I'll be completely honest, is one of the reasons why I left the union was because of that. Because I was frustrated, and I was disgusted that
Right.
I couldn't believe that I was told that. So kudos to you for stepping up and fighting for it. I think that is amazing, and congratulations! So exciting. I have a 8-year-old boy and a almost 2-year-old little boy, and
wow.
it is amazing.
I'm having a little boy too, so I'll be joining the
Oh,
Boy
that is
Moms Club.
awesome. Oh, little boys are the best. They just they love their moms. I know Lauren, you have two girls, but you know, they love their moms.
My sister has two boys and my other sister has one. So
Yay, that's so exciting. Yeah, so exciting. And if there's anything I can do, Eve, let me know. I will certainly speak on my experience. And if you need help fighting this battle, I'm willing to do it.
that's great. I really
That's one thing
appreciate that.
that working at the college was the complete opposite. When I
Right.
started working there, and you know, we have a 2-level platform, and just walking up and down the stairs, was just being too much for me. And I remember going
Right.
to my chair, being like, I can't do this anymore. And she was like, okay, you're good. So we went right to sick leave, and you know, I got topped up.
Right.
But yeah, when I was working for the union, you know, I went back to work when I was 9 months pregnant, and I mean, I got offered a job at the college, so that's why when I left the union to go work for the college. But you know, I had to go back at 9 months because I just couldn't financially do it. You know,
Right.
how can you go from making such a great wage
Right.
to making nothing, right? And now you have diapers to buy and all this other stuff, right? And you
And
know,
that,
and kids are
yeah,
expensive.
and that's my struggle. I went from a, you know, at least a 40-hour week. And when they cut my hours back, I was making less than I would on unemployment.
Yeah.
So for the first well, no, 2.5 months almost, I was making less than I would in unemployment. And now right after 3 months, I'm jumping right on the unemployment wage. So it's like, if they could have, you know, taught me up, if they're not going to allow me to work, you know, it would be nice if
Yeah.
a union would help top you up on that. And then if they're going to also end your work that early on, then it's like something's got to give, you
Yeah.
know. And the thing is, I don't, if something doesn't change, I don't want that to deter me from ever having a second child, because come you know, a couple of years down the road, I'll have a child already, and I'll have be paying a mortgage. Like, I won't be able to afford to take almost 2 years off. So,
Well, I'm here for you. If you need anything,
well, thank
I'll
you.
be willing to fight your fight with you.
Well, you know what? Now is probably the best time, Rhonda, to get your phone number just in case.
Sure.
Um,
And I can facilitate that connection too.
okay, well, maybe
I'll
I'll take
connect you guys via email, and
that.
Awesome.
Perfect.
just reach out to me if you'd like to be connected with Eve,
For sure.
and
Yes.
I'll do that.
We'll do it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that story and for sharing all of your stories. I think, you know, we've seen that we've come a fair ways, but oh boy, we still have a long ways left to go. And you know, there is a lot of things that even myself, as someone who is an office worker, takes for granted, because you know, I have this support. And so you just automatically assume we're in Canada. Everyone has that support, and everyone should have that support. And just like Rhonda said, you know, if you want someone to help in the fight, you've got lots of allies. And I very much appreciate you giving us your story,
Yes.
and for all of you giving your story. You know, the more we can pass on to students, and the more we can scream from the rooftops, the more change we can make in the process. And I just very much appreciate you being willing to talk with us tonight.